Today we go back much earlier. I I don't know, I sort of like going back and forth in terms of when movies were made much earlier today, so much earlier. It's a movie that I've seen for quite a while. It's not exactly a long movie, and so I'm not entirely sure why I haven't just seen it yet. But you know, some take time to watch, before. I don't know. This is one of those weird comedies, let's say. They used to do in particular in ages past, not so much now. Well, the weird comedies these days are rom-coms, I suppose. This is not quite a rom-com, I think, now, but still a weird comedy. I think it could be defined as a weird comedy. I'm assuming, yeah, like a rom-com. It's weird in the sense that it's it's I don't know, it's a comedy of awkwardness or something. Anyway, yeah, it's very old. It's I think from 1951. Yeah, one. So that's 63 years earlier in comparison to the movie I watched yesterday, which was made in 2014. Yeah, quite old, and most of these actors are obviously not alive anymore. Um, yeah. Um, one of the actors here is Alec Guinness. Now, I think, as many people have done, uh, I've I've personally seen him first in Star Wars, even though that was at the end of his career. You see, well, not exactly. He had 20 more years to live or so, but he had done much more before then. He did after as well. Apparently, mainly Star Wars. Oh, there was, apparently, he played a chief clerk in Kafka. Yeah, but mainly, I mean, in his later life, I'm assuming major franchise was Star Wars. Apparently, played Julius Caesar once as well. So yeah, this is clearly one of his earlier roles. Not that early, actually. He didn't actually do much early on. For the first couple of decades, apparently, he did a total of 5 films. First couple of decades. Very slow start. Hmm. It's remarkable that he kept on going. Yeah. I've watched Kind Hearts and Coronets, and that was even earlier. I quite liked it. I don't quite remember it very much now. It's been quite some time, but I remember liking it as a comedy. Yeah, this is supposed to be along similar lines as well. I think this is the one I'm going to watch now. It's called the Lavender Hill Mob, and it's supposed to be a comedy crime as well, like Kind Hearts, but I don't know what if it matches it in terms of comedy. But clearly, I was impressed by this. I've seen it quite a while ago now as well. Not quite a while, as much of a while as when it was made, but yeah. So this was his seventh film, apparently. No, eighth film I'm going to watch. Still early on, but he had 7 other films behind him at this point. Apparently, the film he played the year before, he did Benjamin Disraeli. He did. He did play quite a lot. And yeah, but Cardinal, a prince, like a couple of princes apparently. Anyway, I'm not sure why I'm doing this. I don't normally do this. I don't normally focus so much on. Yeah. Uh, so let's just begin this mob thing and revive on a Guinness once more after 20 years. And yeah, it begins sort of slow but interesting. I mean, he's just observing mainly, mostly, most of the time. Uh, you know, uh, I could figure out what he was thinking of, what the ideal way of smuggling is. Yeah. As soon as they show those statues, decorate things. Yeah. But, this was just 6 years after the war. Not very long, is it? This is this is a very different film from Tokyo Story, but made around the same time. And I don't think it's going to be like. I mean, apparently Sid James is in it. I haven't seen him so far, but I don't think it's the same sort of comedy as the other comedies he's usually in. So, like Carry On series and such. Those are more ridiculous comedies. This is so far a more subdued one. Uh, yeah, so far it's not, no, it's not too bad. It's sort of interesting, I suppose. I'm not sure what the point of that reading was with the old lady. Seemed like it was a weird nonsense that was read, and then the bell was rung. The guy to get his stuff in, but still don't know why the reading was there. I mean, I guess to fill up some time, but it didn't have any particular relevance. It seems. I'm not sure if the old lady will have any relevance in the future. Uh, if she was old at this point, then she must have passed away in the 70s, maybe a bit later or earlier. It's kind of I don't know if it's distracting to think such things when watching old films, but sometimes it's inevitable, isn't it? You just keep thinking about which actors likely to have expired, you know. Obviously, when it concerns a film from 70 years ago, it's very much more likely that most have. 70s, yeah. I mean, unless they were 20 in it, or 30 at most, and maybe 100. I mean, well, maximum human lifespan was what, 120, so I guess it's theoretically possible, but it's not quite on average that likely. Even 100 sometimes is too much, isn't it? Life is creepy and short. The introduction of all four, well, two criminals primarily, and couple of supposed professionals who wouldn't mind resorting to crime. It's quite something. a let's call it a meeting. You know, they do talk in a manner that isn't incredibly understandable. Uh, like they were mentioning names and such streets. Streets are streets, but yeah, it's not very. I don't know. I guess the gist is what is important. I assume. I think it's interesting to note the adverts back then. I mean, I assume they're genuine adverts, and not sure I thought they might have been put there just for the movie. But at one point, this some sort of television product called Ecovision is advertised, like one of those city, big city adverts, except there's only one of them, whereas these days there's tons near each other and they're all lighted up and it's all LED, of course, whereas this is just a poster. I mean, they still put up posters, but in the central cities, it's mainly LEDs ads, and yeah, some sort of television product called Ecovision. I've never heard of it at all ever. Um, then again, I'm not overly familiar with 1950s television products. Well, it's kind of interesting to note anyway. It's sort of a relic, isn't it? When one watches such old films, it's unless they're completely made up for the movie, in which case they're a relic of the movie. But if they're not, then they are uh, they are a relic of the era. It's interesting in a sense, I suppose. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure why Pendleton ended up, nicking that picture. I mean, I'm assuming it wasn't part of the plan, and he really genuinely just happened to forget it and took it with him. Because, I mean, I was thinking at first maybe they wanted to attract the attention of the police or they distract them from the theft, but makes little sense. And then they seem to say the others seem to say that he was caught, and they didn't imply that it was planned or anything. So I'm assuming it's just just how does this um it makes little sense otherwise. So I'm assuming it's some sort of genuine oversight. But another interesting thing that happens when one watches old films is when it comes to newspapers in particular, when they show newspapers of the era, they do generally, obviously, I mean, the films were literally made in the era, so, unless they made them completely fictional, unless it's science fiction or something, and the newspapers themselves are fictional. In this case, they aren't, it seems. I mean, well, the thing itself would be, I guess, but the adjacent items aren't usually. So, like Eisenhower is mentioned, and I was just wondering whether that was before he became president or after. Seems like it may have been before because they call him general, and they seem to say that at that point Truman was still president. Uh, yeah, it's sort of interesting then to sort of I mean it's not a documentary, but it sort of functions very in very little amounts as a documentary because you know bits and pieces were read. Obviously, people read bits and pieces of history. They don't necessarily go look through newspapers all the time unless some textbook shows them or such. But alternatively, there are old films that do that as well, and they don't need to be documentaries. They just need to be set in the real world, and I mean, even if the story is completely fictional, as long as they're set in the real world and the newspapers are in complete forgeries, then they're incidentally documentaries in a way. Well, finished it, and it's strange. It's kind of ham-fisted, but I mean, yeah, it's not too dissimilar from what other movies Sir James did, really. So it's not like I don't think it's. Then again, I don't quite remember what kind of heart was about. Clearly, it's been years now, but um, what seemingly impressed me more. This, on the other hand, I don't know, the fact that they thought that somehow tuning into the old McDonald's song was somehow funny is a bit of a letdown. I mean, it's not quite very funny, and um, yeah, but when they were outsmarting them intellectually, it was sort of funny, but then it just turned into a running sort of storyline, and it's a bit blunt, when they do that, car chases and such. It's not quite the funniest thing ever. I mean, it's a relic ultimately. It's how old this movie is. 70 years now. Near 70 years. It's 69. Yeah, but I don't know. It's obviously the comedy relies on a lot of small errors and such. I suppose could be, but none of them are laugh out loud or anything. It's very comedy at best. And I noticed the average rating, and I really try not to usually, so as to not be influenced. But it's not about influence. I mean, an average rating is usually relevant anyway to an individual perception. Apparently, people though on average like this. Apparently, on average, quite a lot. I don't know. Um, but I don't know. I didn't quite. I thought it was a bit, I certainly, in terms of comedy, I mean, it is in a way a sitcom, but a sitcom like Big Bang Theory, obviously, it's much more recent. But I don't know. The jokes were better told, I guess. Also, this ending, the ending there with the cuffs, made little sense. I mean, when you read about it, I guess people have their opinions about it and maybe a bit clarified, but I can't figure it out. I mean, at the end, I guess the how he evaded them was, I suppose, sort of funny. It's still not, not outrageously funny or anything. It's its own thing, I suppose. I don't normally believe that something is outdated as such. It makes little sense. I mean, Kind Hearts is even more outdated than this, and I seemingly like it better. I mean, as I said, I've seen it long ago, so I can quite compare like with like, because I can barely remember that, and I suppose, in another time, one just perceives things differently, and forms an opinion differently. I don't know, as I say, was a bit blunt overall, it seemed to me. Um, but not too bad, just, I don't know, yeah, it's whenever Sid James is involved in particular. He didn't have a very large role, but his comedy films are always like this, very blunt usually.